Today we're with Susan Parker, the leader of the Guildford Greenbelt Group. Susan, thank you for coming on to Guildford Dragon to be interviewed.
Thank you.
What made you get involved in local politics?
Politics came from becoming involved in local activities, local activism, because GGG started as a protest group. We basically felt that the local councillors and the executive weren't listening to the concerns of the population as a whole, and we formed a protest group. When no one was listening, we said, well, if you don't listen, we'll stand for election, and they didn't listen, so we stood for election.
So was that across the whole borough or in a particular area?
It was absolutely across the whole borough, and one of the interesting things about GGG is that we expressed a concern for green fields and the countryside throughout the whole borough, not just in one particular area.
Okay, but you don't have so much support in the town centre?
I think we have a lot of support in the town centre, but less than we do perhaps in the rural areas.
Okay, and isn't the group, the GGG, a single issue party? Once the local plan is agreed, won't you go the same way as UKIP after Brexit?
Well, first of all, and most importantly, the local plan is not agreed. The housing number is still very much up for grabs. It's going to be considered again by the inspector in the new year, and the implications of what that new housing number is going to do is going to have radical impacts on the local plan. So that's the first thing. So even if we were a single issue party, the issue is still very much ongoing. Secondly, the responsibilities of local government are hugely overridden, dominated by planning. It's the most important thing that the district council does. It does a little bit to do with licensing, a little bit to do with libraries and so forth, but the most important thing that the borough council does, as opposed to the county council, is the planning issue. Many of the other things that concern people are actually done by other local authorities, the county council, the local NHS bureaucracy and so forth, and they are not driven by the borough council, so it's important to realise that that's a segregation there.
Okay, but I think you said that the local plan would still be an issue after the next election.
Yes.
So do you not think it's going to be resolved by then?
Absolutely not.
You're sure of that?
Well, I am not sure, because nobody can ever be sure about these things, but the local plan has not been confirmed. The Office of National Statistics has revised its housing numbers hugely. So the housing number is that we need in the borough, according to the Office of National Statistics, which is a government quango, is 301 homes a year. That's what they think we need in terms of our population. Guildford's housing target is more than double that. The inspector has said that he needs to reconvene the public inquiry to look at the numbers again, to actually reconsider what the numbers should be, and then obviously there will be an impact depending on the revised numbers, which will be going down in terms of what the local plan needs to do, and therefore it needs to be reconsidered. Everything's on the table, everything's to play for. Okay,
so your analysis of that is that it's unlikely that that can all be done before the next election?
Almost certainly, not least that purdah, which is the time when you stop doing politics, everybody effectively ceases to be a borough councillor until after the election, is I think on the 21st of March. If the inspector is looking at the housing number and bringing it down sometime in January or February, he will then have to consider what his impact, what the impact of that public discussion will be. He will come back with a number. Even if he does that very fast, Guildford then has to go through a process which will be to take on board that number, adjust the plan for that. That can't possibly happen in 3 months.
Okay.
I expect there need to be some kind of public consultation. It's going to take a lot longer than 3 months.
Okay. Now you say that GGG isn't a single issue party, or even if it is, you do consider the other responsibilities of the borough council. So what, for instance, then is the GGG position on economic development in Guildford?
We're in favour of economic development.
What would you do differently than the Conservative administration at the moment?
I think we'd be very much more focused on smart growth, high added value growth. Economic growth is a good thing. We do believe in economic growth, but we don't believe that Guildford is a suitable centre, for example, for an Amazon warehouse or for a large warehousing buildings, which is what the Borough Council wants to build in various places around the borough. We think that's crazy. Our land is too high value. We've got beautiful countryside. It's not a suitable place to put huge amounts of warehousing, and our roads are rubbish. So it's a crazy idea. We want high added value, high tech, which is usually not very land hungry, and it's a different emphasis.
Okay, but on other areas like day centres, waste collection and recycling, parking, cultural services, have you got any real differences in the current Conservative administration?
There are some differences there. When it comes to cultural activities, I think our emphasis has been, historically, we have been active in trying to protect some of the cultural activities that have actually not been protected by the local executive at the moment. We were quite vocal in seeking to protect the Electric Theatre. We didn't think it was appropriate to pass it on. We believe in looking after our cultural centre and our cultural activities. That's something that's very important to us. In terms of parking, one of the things we've been pushing for is to use the land that is used for parking much more efficiently, so that parking is not just one flat area of land which is not then used. For example, at the university, you could put halls of residence on top of the huge acreage of university car parks. That would then free up housing in the town. Similarly, you could use some of the urban car parks, which are currently derelict, particularly around the back of North Street, to build high-quality residential housing. It's a question of efficiency.
Okay.
Land efficiency.
Now, the group, the Guildford Greenbelt Group, has only got 3 councillors. And sometimes you can't even vote the same way. Why is that?
Well, we don't have a very strong party whip, and we don't have a party mechanism, so we each form our own views on various things.
But you don't have a strong whip, or you don't have one at all?
Well, we don't have a whip.
Right.
We're not that organised to have a party machine, because we are a very small entity with just a local party. But we are people who think about the issues, and we don't necessarily all think the same way, but we do think the same way on matters that are core and fundamental. That's why we agree together to vote the same way as a party.
Okay, and are you and the other 2 councillors going to stand again next year?
That's the plan at the moment, yes.
That's the plan at the moment. Okay, and will you be standing in all the seats in the borough, or?
I think that's probably not the case. I don't think we stood in absolutely every ward last time. We're looking for more people to stand. We've got a certain number of people to stand, but more would always be welcome. Okay. Obviously, existing supporters and more.
Now, we interviewed Angela Gunning, the leader of the Labour group, the other day, or a few weeks ago, and her observation was that national politics has an obvious major influence on local elections. If that's true, and if you agree, what bearing is it likely to have on your party's fortunes at the next election?
Well, I think there's a great deal of dissatisfaction with the Conservative Party for all sorts of reasons, and I think...
At a national level, you mean?
At a national level and at a local level.
Right.
And I think that that concern will probably result in a certain amount of loss of the Conservative vote. So I think that could be useful. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think there is a degree to which the result last time was affected by the fact that it was at the same time as a general election. Might be this time, you never know.
Yeah.
But when it comes to just a local election, people may well vote on purely local issues. Some people said to us on the doorstep last time that they couldn't vote for GGG because it would let Jeremy Corbyn into Downing Street. that's not going to be
But
an
that is
issue.
nonetheless how some people think. So, given the uncertainty about Brexit, isn't it possible that all that will simply swamp the local issues, and that's the issue, or national issues that people will consider at that time?
That's possible. We may be a little clearer about what's happening about Brexit by next May. We'll either be in or out or know where we are,
Right.
whatever happens. So next May, I think Brexit is going to be less of a concern. There may be some reaction to where we are, but I think that is not going to be so much an overriding concern as it is right now. It doesn't say that Brexit doesn't matter. It matters enormously. It's probably the most important issue facing us. But by next May, we will know where we are to a much greater extent.
Okay, so now it's May 2019, the local election is over and the count is being done, and the result is that GGG has won 7 seats and holds the balance of power between the Conservatives and the Lib Dems. The local plan, as you predicted, is still to be finally agreed. What would you do?
I think we would make our support for either of the other two parties dependent on radical rewriting of the local plan. The plan as it stands is building far too many homes on Greenbelt land. It's building an extra 25% effectively of the housing stock is being put onto into our area, which is a huge number, and of that 70% is currently planned to go onto countryside, which is crazy because our countryside is precious and beautiful and we need it for all sorts of environmental reasons. So we will say that we will support a plan which is using brownfield within the town to build the homes we need, which are affordable homes, key workers' homes, homes for people to downsize into, homes for the young to as starter homes. Those are the homes we need. We don't need acres and acres and acres more of executive homes with garages sprawling across our countryside. It's not good for anybody. It will have appalling impact on our air quality. It will damage our farmland. It will damage the countryside that we all care about, which is why we live here. It's a crazy, crazy situation.
But do you think that the Conservative Party or the Lib Dem Party would agree to go into any kind of partnership or agreement with you?
I think they might, if that's the only way they actually stay in power. I think both.
Don't they have more in common actually than either party does with you?
They might, but maybe we'll get more than 7 seats. You never know.
Okay.
Particularly since there are some independents. The independents might also join together with us,
Okay.
and we'll see where we are.
Okay. Susan Parker, thank you very much. And thanks to Send Hall as well for allowing us to use the hall for this interview.
Thank you.